now is former Liberal MP Jason Falinski. Thank you for your time. Looking at the suburban seats, so we haven't seen gains there for the coalition, the fights against so-called teal MPs, they've actually gone pretty well considering the overall support for the coalition. What do you make of that contrast, if you like?
Oh, I think there's a faction inside the Liberal Party of modern Liberals who basically got to the point where they had to run their own campaigns, and they did pretty well on the whole against Teals, particularly in Victoria, particularly Tim Wilson, who actually won a seat, defying expectations, including those of Andrew Clennell. And I'm sure Tim will let Andrew live that down at some point in the next 5-10 years. But, you know, that's probably what happened. And I think that what needs to now occur is just some pretty hard heads need to look at the numbers and see where we need to win votes in which seats, and therefore what sort of issues we need to focus on to win the hearts and minds of people in those seats.
Look, Andrew Clennell has a prediction. I guess I'm a bit of a fence sitter. It's easy for me not to have egg on my face because I don't like to have a crack at too many of the seats given the side hustle on the touchscreen. So when you talk about strategy and winning votes, what does that mean? Presumably not to forget about these inner city, or not just inner city, but, you know, in a suburban, you know, where a teal seat begins and ends is probably a bit hard to say. Macalla, your neck of the woods, isn't that inner city-like? So they can't be forgotten, but then bring the suburbs in as well, figuring out a strategy that's all-encompassing rather than we're doing this, not this.
Yeah, look, I think there are issues that we should focus on to win the hearts and minds of people in the cities. I mean, the big one is housing affordability. Another one is traffic congestion. A third one is letting people keep more of the money they earn. Childcare is a huge issue. Tom, education for kids is a massive issue. I mean, all the sorts of things that I suspect if you and I ever saw each other in person, you would tell me face to face. So I don't think this is a mystery. I just think in the last 10 or so years, the Liberal Party has focused its attention on other constituencies and therefore other issues.
So think of something like housing, because it strikes me that both sides have largely fiddled at the margins, and there still seems to be so many more policies on demand, on helping people to buy in rather than supply. Is that the one most right for something radical? And I'm going beyond, you know, access to superannuation, but stuff where you could actually try to radically shake things up? Or is that a bit tricky given the multi-tiers of government on that one? And doing that from opposition is almost impossible.
I think we've come to the point where the Gordian Knot of public policy in Australia, where the vested interests have just taken over the way our parliament works, has got to the point where there is now a larger constituency talking and demanding resolution to these issues. I don't think housing is necessarily the preeminent issue. It is the biggest public policy failure in Australia's history, though. There are just as big issues in tax, industrial relations, education, technology, infrastructure, financial services, regulation, the way the law is now used for profit rather than justice. These, like, Tom, you walk into a room of public policy issues and you'll hit something that is long overdue for reform because it now serves the interests of the vested interests rather than people of Australia.
All right, so from the Gordian Knot to maybe the sort of Damocles will be hovering over the next Liberal leader. Who will it be, Jason, and why?
Well, at this point, I think it'll probably be Susan Lee. I think, and primarily because I think both Angus and Susan have had very senior roles for a while, are very experienced hands. But I think the perception of us not speaking to women, who make up about 52% of the Australian electorate, won't get solved by electing a female leader, but certainly it will go away in an optical sense and a symbolic sense, which is important in politics to say, look, the Liberal Party does care about you and your concerns. And look, I think they'll do relatively well. I mean, if the next leader doesn't focus on the next election, this may seem strange, but actually focuses on the process of making us a credible political movement that people would want to vote for, and just focuses on that process, and the rest will take care of itself.
All right, Jason Falinski, thank you. We'll talk again. Reunite you with your old friend Patrick Gorman as well. Couldn't quite align the schedules this week, but alas,
where is he today, Tom?
Thank you. He's just being disciplined. I guess you don't go out and talk on the same day as the Prime Minister when you're his assistant. Is that the deal? What do you reckon? I
just think he's hiding. He doesn't want to gloat too much. He's a very humble person.
He is. We'll see how the wine bars of Perth have lit up after that victory. All right, Jason, thank you. We'll talk to him next week. I'll give him mine to reply then.